I know exactly where you are right now. I've been there. And actually, you are exactly where you need to be. I've been waiting for you for a long time, Dash. Not physically. Mentally. You are in the void phase. I'm going to speak to the thought you haven't told anyone. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You look at your friends, your old habits, even your oldest dreams, and they feel foreign, alien. Like clothes that used to fit, but now they are too tight, too small. You feel isolated, but not because you are lonely. You feel isolated because you have evolved, and your environment has not. I need you to hear this. That feeling is not depression. It is not confusion. It is not even of this world. That is the separation. You are not losing your mind. I know everyone says you are. But listen to me. You are simply losing your attachment to an old world, because a new world is trying to be born through you. There is a pattern. Lately, things have been stripped away from you. Relationships that seemed permanent suddenly ended. Comfort zones dissolved. Plans you were sure about suddenly hit a wall. And you've been asking yourself, why am I going backward when I'm working harder than ever? You are not going backward. You are being recalibrated. The universe, God, does not build new worlds on shaky foundations. Before a skyscraper goes up, the excavation must go down. Deep down. Into the dirt. Into the dark. That is where you have been. In the excavation phase. It feels like a burial, but it is actually a planting. You think you are just trying to succeed, but you are doing something far more dangerous. You are trying to shift reality. Think about the great ones, not the celebrities. I'm talking about the architects of history. Think of the man who came from the concrete, from absolute poverty, who didn't just make music, but changed the code of what was possible for everyone who looked like him. He didn't just build a business, he expanded the definition of freedom for a whole generation. He moved the line. Think of the woman who took her own trauma, her own pain, and didn't hide it. Instead, she turned it into a mirror for millions. She built a world where vulnerability wasn't a weakness, it was a weapon. She created a container so large that people who had never felt seen before finally felt home. They didn't just work hard. They became a specific frequency. And that frequency organized a new world around them. And people can feel it. Have you noticed the shift? When you walk into a room now, the air changes. It's subtle, but it's real. People who used to talk over you now listen when you speak. People who used to dismiss you now feel unsettled by your presence. Why? Because you are no longer asking for permission. You are carrying authorization. Your aura is showing. It is heavy. It is real. And it is scaring the parts of you that are still addicted to being small. Do not shrink. Do not apologize. Do not go back to the old clothes. The old world is dead. You are here to build the new one. I want to talk about your leadership aura, because this is something you may have noticed but haven't named yet. There is a shift happening in how people experience you. It's subtle, but it is real. Conversations feel different when you're in them. There is a weight to what you say that wasn't there before, or maybe it was there but people are responding to it differently now. People who once spoke over you now listen when you talk. People who once dismissed your perspective now pause when you share it. You walk into rooms and something reorganizes. Not loudly, not dramatically, but something adjusts. That is aura. And aura is not a personality trait. It is not charisma. You can't manufacture it in a workshop or perform your way into it. Aura is what accumulates when a person spends enough seasons in alignment that their external presence begins to carry the weight of their internal formation. It is the visible output of invisible work. It is what happens when someone has been through enough, stayed faithful through enough, been tested and refined enough, that their presence itself communicates something. Think about what Kobe's aura was actually made of. Not talent. Plenty of players were talented. It was made of 10,000 pre-dawn hours on empty courts. It was made of ice baths nobody watched and take. It was made of the decision, repeated 10,000 times, to choose discipline when rest would have been understandable. That discipline accumulated. It crystallized into something that opponents could feel across a court before the game even started. Your aura is made of the same material. Every season you chose to stay faithful when quitting was available, that was a pre-dawn workout nobody saw. Every time you held your standard when the environment was asking you to lower it, that was your ice bath. Every time you chose the harder right thing over the easier wrong thing in private, that was you building something in the invisible that is now becoming visible. The world sees aura as sudden. You know it was built. And what was built in you is now showing. Here is something I want you to understand about what you are beginning to feel. There is a clarity coming. Not about every detail. Not about every step. But about direction. About what belongs in your new world and what doesn't. About what you are building toward and what you are building away from. There is a discernment that is starting to operate in you that feels different from how you used to make decisions. It's almost like a quiet knowing, a sense of yes or no that comes from somewhere deeper than logic. That is your leadership aura working on the inside. World builders develop this over time. They develop a sensitivity to what is aligned with what they are creating and what is not. Not from judgment, from clarity. There is a difference and it matters. Judgment looks at something and says that is wrong. Clarity looks at something and says that doesn't belong in what I am building. It's a much quieter, much more powerful way of operating. This is why as you grow into this new world, you'll start to feel more selective about your circle. Your inner circle will get smaller and more intentional. Your focus will narrow in on what actually matters. Your tolerance for things that drain the frequency you've built will decrease. And some people on the outside will look at that process and call it coldness, or arrogance, or you thinking you're better than people. But from the inside, it won't feel like any of those things. It will feel like precision. Like protecting what God assigned you to build. Like understanding that a new world has an architecture, a specific design, and not everything that worked in the old world belongs in the new one. God designed specificity into everything He made. Light doesn't operate at random wavelengths. Your DNA doesn't carry random codes. Every living thing was built with a specific design in mind. Your new world is no different. It has a design. And part of your leadership assignment is to protect that design even before it's fully visible to anyone else. Let me tell you what your new world is actually offering people. It isn't just success. It isn't just influence or a platform or a following. What your new world is offering is proof. Proof that you can lead with integrity and still win. Proof that you don't have to compromise who you are to achieve at a high level. Proof that vision carried in patience eventually produces evidence that no one can argue with. Proof that the distance between where you started and where you're going doesn't disqualify you, it qualifies you. Because the gap is where the character was built. You are building evidence. When LeBron went back to Cleveland and won that championship, he didn't just win a ring. He proved that loyalty doesn't have to cost you greatness. He proved you can go home. He built evidence that still lives in people today. What are you building evidence of? Because something in you is designed to prove something that needs proving in the world right now. Something too many people have stopped believing is possible. What are you saying that only you can say? What are you building that only you were designed to build? I want to be real with you about something. Starting a new world is heavy. Not heavy like failure. Not heavy like shame. Heavy like significance. Like when you hold something that matters and your whole body recognizes the weight of it. The way a parent holds a newborn and every other concern in the world temporarily shrinks because nothing is more important than this thing they are holding right now. That kind of heavy. You've been feeling it. A seriousness that isn't sadness. A sense of responsibility that doesn't have a clear target yet but presses on you like something wants to come out. A kind of urgency that feels different from anxiety. It doesn't make you want to run, it makes you want to build. That is not stress. That is calling. That is the weight of a new world pressing against the inside of your preparation, asking to be released into the world. And here's what you need to know about that weight. God does not give you weight He did not also give you capacity for. Those two things arrive together. The call and the capacity come in the same package. Your capacity may not feel ready. It may feel small compared to the scale of what you sense you're supposed to build. But capacity doesn't grow in proportion to confidence. It grows in proportion to faithfulness. You don't need to feel ready. You need to be faithful. And capacity expands to meet faithfulness every single time. Moses heard God speak from a burning bush and his response was, "Who am I?" Not a warrior's response. Not a leader's confidence. Just a very human moment of, "I see the size of what you're asking. I feel the smallness of what I am, and the gap between those two things terrifies me." And God didn't hand him a detailed plan. God said, "I will be with you." That's still the word for world builders. Not a full roadmap. Not cleared terrain. Not every obstacle removed before you start. Just, "I will be with you." And when God says that, your capacity stops being limited to what you currently have. Because you're operating with divine backing. And nothing backed by God stays small forever. Your leadership aura is showing because authorization looks like something. People who carry divine authorization for something do not move through the world the same way as people who don't. It's not arrogance. Environment was asking you to dilute it. You were building aura. All of it accumulated. And it is radiating now. It's not confidence in the performance sense. It's a settledness, a groundedness, a quiet certainty that exists underneath the uncertainty of the details. You can be completely unclear on the specific next steps and still carry a certainty about the direction that other people can feel. That is what authorization looks like from the outside. And here is the thing about authorization: you can't manufacture it. You can't copy it from someone else's blueprint because it's tied to your specific calling in your specific process. The Oprah effect wasn't built by imitating what someone else had done. It was built by Oprah being fully, unapologetically, irreversibly yourself, in public, on camera, with millions of people watching, including the painful parts, including the parts that weren't polished, including the vulnerability that made networks nervous. She built an empire by refusing to be a performance of herself and choosing instead to be the actual person. That is what built the aura. Not strategy. Not positioning. The refusal to be smaller than she was in order to fit into a container someone else designed for her. You have been making that same refusal. Maybe quietly. Maybe without recognizing it as the significant act it actually is. But every time you refused to shrink, every time you held your standard when it would have been easier to lower it, every time you stayed true to what God placed in you, in the new worlds don't arrive fully assembled. Nobody wakes up one day with a complete world. It grows. Think about how a city grows. It starts with a foundation that nobody celebrates, concrete below ground, infrastructure nobody photographs, systems nobody sees. Then a structure rises. Then a skyline that eventually becomes so iconic that people travel from other countries just to stand underneath it and look up. New York City was not built in a decade. It was built in decisions. Thousands of them, made by thousands of people over hundreds of years. Some brilliant, some desperate, some made in crisis. But each one contributed to the skyline that exists now. Your new world will grow the same way. It starts with your foundation. And your foundation is not a strategy. It's not a business plan or a brand positioning or a vision board. Your foundation is your character, your integrity, your faithfulness, your relationship with the God who commissioned this, your clarity about who you are and what you are here to build. That foundation was poured in the seasons nobody watched, the years of testing, the years of building without evidence, the years where the vision felt like a cruel joke because the circumstances were completely opposed to it. Those years were not detours. They were foundation work. And foundation work is the least glamorous, most essential thing that happens in any significant build. Diamonds form in pressure, not in comfort. In sustained, intense, transformative pressure. And you have felt that pressure. You know which seasons I'm talking about. The ones where the weight felt unbearable, where the delay felt unfair, where you genuinely wondered whether the dream was dying or developing. It was developing. And now you're beginning to see the facets. Beginning to see the clarity that only pressure produces. Beginning to understand what you carry and what it's for. When a new world begins to rise around a person, opposition shows up. I want to name this so it doesn't catch you off guard. Not because you've done anything wrong. Not because your vision is flawed. But because new worlds threaten old systems. And old systems don't dissolve without resistance. They push back with doubt, distraction, discouragement. They send people who once supported you who now feel unsettled by your growth, not out of malice, but because watching you expand confronts them with questions about their own lives they aren't ready to answer. This is pressure testing, not punishment. When NASA prepares a spacecraft for launch, they don't just put it in space and hope. They subject it to conditions more extreme than what it will actually face. They need to know, before lives are at stake, that the vessel will hold. The opposition you're facing is the same principle. Your new world is being tested before launch. The enemy isn't trying to destroy you. He's too late for that. He's trying to find a crack in the vessel before it launches. A vulnerability, a compromise, an attachment to the old world strong enough to abort the new one. And what you're learning in the pressure is that there are no cracks. Not because you're perfect, because the one who built you knew what he was building you for. You are going to hold. You are going to launch. And what launches will change more than you can calculate from where you're standing right now. The people who will inhabit your new world are already moving toward it. They don't know that's what they're doing. They describe it differently: restless, searching, tired of the same answers to the same questions. They're functioning but not fulfilled. Moving through spaces that feel fine but not right. Hungry for something they cannot name. What they're hungry for is what your new world offers. Something real. Something built from faithfulness rather than performance. Something that proves God is still in the business of making new things through people who said yes. Something that gives others permission to believe that their own calling, however unlikely it seems, is real and worth pursuing. You become that permission, not by being perfect, by being faithfully directional, by moving consistently toward what God placed in you even when the steps aren't fully clear, by existing at a level of fullness that makes people around you quietly expand their own sense of what's possible. You said yes, in private, without an audience, when you didn't fully understand what you were saying yes to. You just knew that what God was drawing you toward felt more like yourself than anything else ever had. And so you moved toward it. Imperfectly. Inconsistently at times. But directionally. That directional faithfulness is enough. It always has been. Here is something I want to be honest with you about. You are not being called to become a different person. You're being called to fully inhabit the person you already are. A lot of people make this mistake when they sense a new assignment. They think they have to manufacture a new version of themselves, more polished, more confident, a version that matches the scale of the vision. So they perform. They construct a persona. They put on a character they believe the moment requires. But performance disconnected from foundation always collapses under pressure. What God is asking is not performance. He is asking for fullness. The unedited, uncompromised, pressure-tested version of you that has been forming in hidden seasons. Not a new you. The real you. Fully expressed, without the constant internal negotiation of whether you're allowed to be this much. The leader people are beginning to see in you, the one whose presence reorganizes rooms, whose words carry weight, whose quiet certainty unsettles people used to operating through noise. That is not a new version. That is the complete version. The one the hidden seasons were building toward. When you inhabit that fully, without apology, everything around you begins to organize in response. The right doors, the right connections, the right opportunities. Not because you hustled for them, because fullness attracts what performance cannot access. Chosen One, I want to talk to you about what kind of world you're building, because this matters more than the size of it. This is not a world built on superiority. It is not a world where you stand at the top and everyone else is below you looking up. Leadership aura is not about elevation away from people. It is about elevation toward purpose. And purpose always involves serving something beyond yourself. The most durable leaders in history, the ones who built things that outlasted them, were not people who built empires for themselves. They were people who built worlds for others. Oprah's world is people in the center of it. LeBron's at Promise School is kids in the center of it. Jay-Z's business moves created pathways for artists who came after him to own their work instead of being owned by labels. The worlds they built weren't just for their own expansion. They were containers that gave other people access to something they couldn't find anywhere else. Your new world is people in the center of it too. Real people. People who've been told the wrong story about who they are. People who've been handed limitations that don't belong to them. People who are living inside an old world that doesn't have room for what they carry. People who are one piece of evidence away from believing that they too can rise. Your new world is that evidence. The leadership aura people sense from you is not just authority. It is access. It's the feeling that where you are going, there is room for more than just you. That the world you are building has doors, not just walls. That rising into your full self doesn't mean leaving others behind. It means creating a path that others can see and follow. That's the difference between a legacy and an empire. Empires are built for the emperor. Legacies are built for the people. You are building a legacy. As your new world takes shape, you will have moments of quiet recognition. Not announced loudly. Not with fanfare. Just ordinary days where something inside you confirms, this is it. This is why the delay made sense. This is why the stripping was necessary. I needed to arrive here as the complete version, not still negotiating my identity, not still needing applause to stand firm. Those moments are sacred. Don't rush past them in the urgency of building. Let them anchor you. Because world building is consuming. It costs time, energy, focus, and faith. You need to be replenished. Pause long enough to acknowledge when heaven confirms what you already sensed. Say thank you when the evidence arrives, when the door opens that strategy alone couldn't have opened, when the connection forms that feels orchestrated, when the timing aligns in a way logic cannot fully explain. Gratitude is navigation. It keeps you calibrated to the source that authorized the whole journey. It keeps you humble enough to be corrected when you drift and confident enough to continue when you doubt. It keeps you from confusing your own momentum with the movement of God. What you are doing is not just ambitious. It is authorized. And authorized things carry a different quality than ambitious things. Stay close to the one who authorized it. Chosen One, let me close with something I want to stay with you. You are not starting a new world because you are better than the old one. You are starting a new world because you were built for something the old world could not contain. There is a vision in you too large for the containers the old world offered. A calling that doesn't fit inside its ceilings. A love for God, for people, for what is genuinely possible, that the old world simply did not have room for. And God, who wastes nothing, looked at what was in you and said, that needs its own world. So he started building one. through your decisions, around your faithfulness. Because of your yes, the private one, spoken when no one was watching, when there was no applause, when saying yes cost something real. God was building a world through that yes. He still is. In this season, in the next decision you make, in the next standard you hold when lowering it would. It's waiting for real. It is waiting for someone who carries the frequency of what is actually possible. Someone who stands as evidence that new worlds are still being built, that God still commissions unlikely people to build them, that the gap between where you started and where you are going is not a disqualifier, it is the testimony. You are that evidence. Your new world is beginning. And it will be extraordinary, not in the way the world measures extraordinary, but in the way God measures it. Through people who step into what you build and breathe differently. Through minds that expand because they saw you refuse to settle. Through lives that change because you were willing to be first. Through generations that inherit a different story because you decided not to agree with the smaller version of yourself. Your leadership aura is showing. The atmosphere knows it. The timing is confirming it. The people already being drawn toward what you're building feel it before they can name it. And when this world is fully built, when the doors are open and the people who are waiting have walked inside, you'll look back at this exact season. When everything was still invisible and all you had was your yes and your faith and your willingness to be used for something bigger than yourself. And you will know, this is what I was made for. This is the world I was sent to start. And it is only the beginning. Write amen and 99 in the comments if this message confirmed what you've already been feeling in your spirit. Your new world is real. Your leadership aura is showing. And God is not finished building.